My name is Jon Moore. I'm work for the National 1001 New Worshiping Communities team in the area of fund development. Financial sustainability is something that all communities struggle with. It's something that they need to achieve. Some recent survey research shows that those communities that achieve financial sustainability in 4 years have the best chance of continuing to thrive, and we have many that are not at that point yet, but it's something that you need to start working on immediately. One of the problems is folks don't think about financial sustainability early in their crews. So they get a grant, they get another grant, and they live on those grants and don't worry about building the community that they need to build. The first thing one needs to do in achieving financial sustainability is to know how much money you need and what you're going to spend it on. And that requires a budget. So those of you who have not done a budget, it's something to get on right away. That budget needs to fit nicely with your mission and vision statement, because that is, the budget fulfills the purpose of that mission and vision statement. And so a mission and vision statement, of course, is critical in all aspects of new worshiping communities. But a budget is what generates the funds in order to reach that vision. A budget also is tied together directly with the story of the community, what it's there to achieve, what it has been achieving, and how the funds have been a key component of achieving the mission. And once you have that type of thinking integrated into your budget, into your community, you can start having a compelling story to tell. So once you have a budget, you know how much money you need to raise, you know how you're going to spend it. Then you can go out looking for the money by telling your story and bringing the money in. Now, the first place people go is the grants that are available through the 1001. The first grant is something called the Seed Grant. Now, the Seed Grant is a grant of $7,500, and its intent is to get a community started. There's a fairly low bar to receive that grant because there is a great interest. We have a great interest in seeing people get out there and try something. Try to make something happen. Be creative, be innovative. That's what the Seed Grant is for. It can be used to pay for anything, including can support the leader, it can support rent, it can support equipment, and it's a very simple statement, a very simple application that one fills out, and so that's the first place that you can get going with is a Seed Grant. The next grant that's available can be applied for a year after the Seed Grant, and that's the Investment Grant. The Investment Grant is a grant of $25,000 that has to be matched locally by another $25,000. So it's an opportunity for a community to pull down $50,000 for its budget. And that is a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging application, but it raises a lot more money for the community. 18 months following an investment grant, one can go seek out what's called a growth grant. And the growth grant is another $25,000. It needs to be matched locally again with $25,000. And you can go for the growth grant 18 months after the investment grant. So that's the series of grants that are available through 1001. So you can get a total of $57,500 over a period of about 3 years. And during this time, one should be thinking about where the rest of the funds are going to come from to sustain the community. I look at the grants and I see them as just as an opportunity to buy us some time while we build up the funding for a community. Funding for a community comes first from the individuals in the community. As a leader, you need to make a commitment to the community, a commitment of dollars that you can start giving. Secondly, your leadership team needs to follow your lead and make a commitment of dollars themselves. And that commitment is what gives them the credibility, what gives you the credibility to ask for money from within your community. And then you need to build up giving within your community. Now, giving in a community is for basically, there's two sides of that coin. One side is the community needs money to thrive, move forward, to grow. And so there's a need for the community to receive money. That's important. But there's also a need for the participants in that community to give. And that's the side of stewardship, which is discipleship, in which we teach people how to give, how important it is to give. And it's really about them. It's about the donor. And it's about them learning to sacrifice for the community. And so there's really two sides of getting people in the community to give: what the community needs and what the givers need. And so how do we start that? One of the things you do is you start with the side of what the community needs, because it's pretty obvious that if the community is going to continue, it needs funding to continue. And it's going to be some people inside that need to provide that support. But as you talk about it and as you get more deeply into this giving, you need to start talking about the importance of people to give, just in and of itself. That giving is important for discipleship. So once you have internal giving going on, then the question is, do you still need additional funds? That's when you start thinking about going outside for money. And one of the things you need to do is to think about who cares about you, cares about what you're doing as a leader, who cares about those in your community and cares about what they're doing, and start making a list of people that you can contact. The fact of the matter is, the available money to support a new worship community doesn't exist in institutional structures. It exists in the pockets of those people who are Presbyterians in the pews. So if you want to find money to support your community, yes, you can go to a church and get a limited amount of money from a church, but where the real money is in the pockets of those people who go to that church. And so you need to find a way to reach those people. One way of doing that is to connect with and build a partnership with an established congregation. And if you can build a partnership with established congregation, they may allow you to talk to the people in the congregation about giving. If there's a culture of scarcity in that congregation, that may not be the congregational partner that you want to depend on. So going through and meeting up with those people. Secondly, you have friends, family, associates, people you've gone to school with, people you've gone to seminary with, people who in the neighborhood. All of these people are potential donors to a community to sustain it financially. So you start making a list and start telling those people what you're doing, telling them the story of the community, what the purpose of the community is, and how much money it takes to make all this happen. And you go to people with that, and you start talking to them about the possibility of them getting involved in your community, a community that's going to be saving lives and changing lives as a result of its work. And so that's the story that you want to get across to people. And once you have that story and you introduce the topic to people, if you can get appointments with them, then you start talking to them and telling them how much money you need and what you think they could give to you, how they could help you the most. Another way of sustaining the community is through grants. There are a number of grants outside of the Presbyterian system that you might discover through grant research. There may be community service organizations that might be interested in granting money to you. You may know of a kind of national fund that you could go after. We don't have a catalog of those things, but there's ways to do grant research in terms of finding those grants. So this is the way that you sustain your community. You start with grants from the Presbyterian Church. You build a stewardship program internally, so people are giving internally to support the community. You look outside of the community for opportunities to raise funds from people outside the community, and you keep your eyes open for any grants that are available. So how do you do an ask? Well, the first part of doing an ask is you want to be prepared. The key is you want to inflame the passion of the person that you're asking. You want to inflame their passion that they could actually be involved in saving lives or changing lives through your community. So to be prepared means you know what the goal of your community is and what a story of how that goal is being achieved in your community. And thirdly, how much money you would like that person to commit to accomplish a part of that story. So if you can get yourself organized that way, where you can go in and sit down with somebody and say, this is what we're doing, this is what we'd like you to do in response, that's how you make an ask. You need to find a person to ask. You need to introduce the concept to that person. Make an appointment so they know you're coming for that purpose. And so you're not surprising them, and they're open to hearing and listening to your story. The passion is what gets people excited about giving to you. Passion is what gets excited. But there's something about them understanding exactly how their funds will be used that closes the deal. So you want to be able to talk, give a story, speak with passion about what you're accomplishing, but then you need to be able to tell them how much money you'd like to get from them and exactly what it would do. What wheel would their money make turn that would accomplish what you're trying to do? So that two sides of it, inflaming the passion and showing them technically exactly what happens when they give their funds. Many of people know the story of Serious Juju, a community in Kalispell, Montana of young skateboarders. Serious Juju was in serious financial condition, and they decided to go outside the Presbyterian system and go to a Rotary Club locally and tell them their story and see if they could find some funding that way, through the club or through individuals in that Rotary Club. Well, in the Rotary Club sat an elder from First Presbyterian Church of Kalispell, and he saw that story and he got connected with that and he got excited and he gave his money and he started talking to the church about giving their money to be supportive of Serious Juju. Well, it wasn't long before that entire church got committed to serious juju. That story was so compelling that it went through the church, and people started committing volunteer hours. Women started making dinner for the kids at Serious Juju. Men started building skateboard ramps. The church made a commitment to give half the time of one of their associate pastors to lead Serious Juju in a more professional way. And the church, the 1001, gave a grant that helped them get a warehouse to be able to have a place to meet and to skateboard. So it was from that story, that outreach and story that Serious Juju made at a Rotary Club, that connected with one of the elders at the church and got the entire church interested. And now there is a significant support, both financial and volunteer support, from the church for Serious Juju. There's a community in Florida that they were struggling with financial sustainability, and they were looking outside to try to find funds to help support. They'd worked through all the grants, and they had no grants left to receive. And they were looking outside the community. But what they found in conversation was, they discovered that their leaders weren't giving personally. And so the leaders had no credibility, and they weren't providing leadership in the area of raising funds. So the leader decided that they needed to make a more significant gift themselves. They made a significant gift. Then they went to their leaders, and they got their leaders to make significant gifts. And afterwards, then a whole number of people who are participating in the community started to give. So they went from not being sustainable to being sustainable internally because of the leadership of giving through both the leader and the leadership team. This happens frequently, that leaders, sometimes because they're not receiving a full salary, will assume that their taking half salary represents their gift to the community. The problem is that doesn't communicate well, because everybody's giving up something. Everybody's sacrificing something to be part of this community. That it's not until a financial gift is given by that leader that leadership in giving starts to filter out among people in the community. So that's a key point, that leadership is leadership in giving funds as well as other types of leadership.